Right, here's another vaguely helpful video with an interesting soundtrack from the Belarusian embassy next door or the preschool. Not sure who's having a party, but this is a game called Rattus. It's basically a war game using a mechanic of death because you use rats that don't really feature in the game to kill your opponents throughout Europe using the Black Death, which was an interesting game to purchase, I think, at the end of the pandemic. You get 20 colored cubes that are people. I'm just going to play a two-player game. The game starts with these purple bordered plague tokens, and then you move on to a specific amount of other tokens. The tokens are made up of symbols. +3 means if you have more than 2 people, yours or your opponent's, in one area, then it triggers. And then there's majority, there's an A, which means like all, and then there's different symbols that constitute from the different powers that you'll pick up during the game. So I'll just put these into different states whilst I talk. So there's 6 powers. The witch, the knight, the merchant, the farmer, or the peasant, the priest, and the king. And there's some expansions to the game that give you more options in the symbol. And then there's another expansion that gives you a whole new set of symbols and an expansion into Africa, which I really want to find. And they're about to bring out a big box version, so maybe they'll go on cheap and they'll be easier to find. The start of the game, everyone places 4 people, 2 at a time, and it's up and back. And so at the start of the game, blue will place 2 somewhere. So blue will place in Spain, and then red gets to put both of their 2. Both of their 2. So red will put in Polonia, and then we'll put in Scandia. Oh wait, do I have to put 2 at the start? Lay 6, la la la. In each region of the board. Oh. Okay. So maybe they come off the board to the side at first, because I think there's only 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, and Italy. Yeah, when you play 2-player, you're just in the light sections. Then 3 players, you're in the next light sections, and then the darker sections for the 4th players. And then if you have Africa, then the 5 and the 6th players play different things. You have a castle that you can use as a mechanic. Sort of in the same way as El Grande, where you just get to chuck cubes in there and they're safe. And then we have the plague piece, which starts wherever. And he's, or they, are the one that's triggering the different plague moments. I think it's called something specific. Plague spreads. So, you have 3 things you can do every turn. You can choose a power. That's optional. You never have to take a power, but when you take a power, you can't give it back. The only way you get rid of a power is someone else takes it from you. Each of the powers have a different thing. So, the king allows you to put 1 of your cubes in the castle, and it's safe for the rest of the game. The priest lets you move 1 of the plague pieces to somewhere next door. The peasant allows you to put 1 extra cube when you place cubes. The merchant allows you to move up to 3 cubes to a different land. The knight allows you to move 3 spaces with the plague piece instead of just 1. And it makes the plague piece itself worth 2 people, which triggers things quickly, or more quickly or quicker, depending on what's right there. And then the witch gets to look at two pieces in different places or the same places, and then gets to swap them. So that's quite defensive. So on your turn, you get to choose. I love the peasant, so I'm going to take the peasant, and that goes into blue's area. Then you place as many cubes as you're supposed to play. So you can choose to play as many cubes as there are plague pieces in the land, right? So let's say I want to play, oh, I didn't play my second two. They're going to play in here. So then, because he has the peasant, he's going to play 2 into Italia, because there's one plague piece and he gets to put a second one, right? Then your next play is to move the plague piece, and you can move it one area. And when you move it into an area, it triggers something. So if there's anything in it with a rat, it triggers. But because there's no one in this area, it doesn't do nothing. Whereas if you put it in here or here or here or here, but you can't because that's 2 away. So you can put here, here, here to trigger something. So he goes into Scandia, right? And then if it's got 1, you spread the plague around. If it has 2 or 3, you spread 2. So he's going to spread 1 into here because he wants to destroy the red. Then he triggers the plague because it's there. This is +3. So because there's only 2 cubes in there, it doesn't trigger, and this leaves the board. And the end of the game is when all of the plague pieces come off the board, and then you do a final plague spread and the game ends. Or if one player has all 20 cubes on the board at once. And then the way that you win is you have the most people left in Europe at the end of the last plague rush. So, again, quick overview. At the start of the game, you place 4 in alternatives, and so if there's 4 players, you do it around and then you go backwards. On your turn, you can pick up a power, and you can use that power whenever you want, at the start of the turn or at the end of the turn, although some of them you need to do it at the start, I think, or this one you have to do when you're moving the plague piece. You then place as many people as there are rats, unless your power allows you to do otherwise. So like the king, you would place a separate one in the castle as well as whatever you're placing on the board. And there's another one that you place, there's a baker I think in the expansion where you put it on here and then you collect ones up here. So you can either take the powers from the common or you steal it off someone else. Then you place your cubes, then you move the plague piece, then you spread the plague, then you trigger the plague, and that's your whole turn. And so the game is like this push-pull of making sure you're protecting your people from the plague, but also pushing the plague directly at your opponents so that their people leave the board successfully. So hopefully that was vaguely helpful.